more love, more joy, everything.
It's inspired young people.
Inspiration comes from within you. When you clear out the garbage that's in your mind, you then create space for something better, more beautiful to come in.
Let's have life and have it more abundantly.
I say yes.
It's like taking a workshop. I get to be in my pajamas.
We have a very active imagination, which is why it's important to learn how to harness it and then point it in the direction you want to go.
I listen to your show every day.
It's time now for Living Your Inspired Life with Susan Burrell. Susan is no-nonsense, inspirational, motivational, and fun.
This is positive talk radio.
Practical wisdom for everyday life.
It's a gift you give yourself.
Now, here's Susan.
And welcome to Living Your Inspired Life. I'm Susan Burrell, and you're listening to News Talk 1590 KVTA. And Living Your Inspired Life, for those of you who may not know, I find that hard to believe actually, but Living Your Inspired Life, for those that may not know, is all about tuning in and tuning up and developing your personal power perspective in life so that you can live the life you were born to live. And we talk about all sorts of things on this show. We talk about socially conscious business, conscious environment, conscious evolution. We talk about the whole Megillah here. So I invite you, if you have missed any past shows, to go to livingyourinspiredlife.org, get yourself caught up and tuned in, and welcome. So today I'm excited because I have a guest who's written several books. I don't want to tip the hand too much, but he just recently came onto my personal radar because of a astounding nonprofit organization that he founded and developed, and I had a friend who is a nurse down at a major hospital in LA, and she decided that she wanted to commit herself to doing hospice. And this program that this gentleman developed is phenomenal, among all these other talents that he has. So I want to welcome onto the show Dannion Brinkley. Hey, Dan.
Hi, Susan. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And thank you for being here. I mean, literally, I think we need to talk a little bit about your background, because literally you, left the body, left the planet, died a couple of times, right?
Well, died one time and then had two more near-death experiences. Struck by lightning in 1975. I was talking on the phone, and lightning hit me in the side of the head, went down my spine. It welded the nails of the heels of my shoes to the floor, threw me in the air, suspended me in the air, and slammed me back down on the bed.
And you were literally gone for about a half an hour, right?
Dead for 28 minutes, completely paralyzed for 6 days, partially paralyzed for 7 months, 2 years to learn to walk and feed myself. And I had what is now known as a near-death experience. But you have to realize, Susan, that Dr. Raymond Moody had not written his landmark book, Life After Life, which quantified the term near-death experience.
Mm-hmm.
What made Dannion famous was that the hospital that they took me to was the medical school that Dr. Moody was going to as a medical student.
Oh, my goodness.
So, dead for 28 minutes, he knew he wanted to interview me, and we became fast friends and spent the next 20 years together on the front lines of exploring the near-death experience.
So, talk about a game changer, huh?
Well, you go from being a complete prick. I grew up a
I'm
tough
glad
guy.
you said it. I'm glad you said
I
it.
don't have a problem about it. The only time the truth hurts is if you hide from it too long.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up a tough guy, and I was a bully, and I played sports, which, jock mentality, and then the Marine Corps. And, the more damage you could do in the Marine Corps, the more accolades you got. So I thought I had found my true reality.
Right.
Then I'm struck by lightning, and I realized that there is a greater part of us that we never truly realize unless we couch it in the concept of religion as opposed to a spiritual search. And because I grew up in the South, and everybody goes to hell where I came from.
Uh-huh.
So the whole idea of the next thing that I was going to see was the burning and the ripping of the flesh and the eternal damnation. So I'd so distanced myself from religion that I just didn't have a concept about it. I just put that aside. And then I discovered that we are great, powerful, and mighty spiritual beings, and we are eternal. And one of the gifts that we're given is the opportunity to live this life.
And I personally believe that's a gift. Of course, there's days where it's not such a nice gift, but
But we create these obstacles. We co-create the life we're going to have. I mean, I know this without. See, I don't. After going through struck by lightning in 1975, open heart surgery in 1989, and brain surgery in 1997. So I had one death and two near-death experiences, and I was not to survive any of these. But I survived them. But see, I'm obsessive compulsive, both dead or alive. And the things that I talk about, and especially in this particular genre, the things that I talk about, I don't have any problems. I have no problems about whether it's accurate, regardless of what anybody says. You are an eternal being. You chose to come here, and you were chosen to come here. You created obstacles. You can never become a great sea captain if you only sail a calm sea. And you create obstacles to overcome. So the bad days are situations that if you deal with it humanly, then it becomes a bad day. If you deal with it spiritually, you look at it from a concept that here's one of those challenges I set for myself at this place and this point so I could stay focused on the divine goal I was sent to achieve as well as my personal goals to celebrate. They're two completely different things.
So let's talk about this co-creation process, Dannion, because on Living Your Inspired Life, one of the things that we talk about is that there are these unseen laws that we don't even know are in action, like gravity and electricity and stuff like that.
Nobody knows what gravity is.
Right. Well, and yet we use it, or we're kind of aware of it, right?
Well, when we get on the scale.
Yeah.
But other than that, no one can explain gravity. It's measured in radio waves. Look at how many things. Look, if you were standing on the top of the Empire State Building and you had a BB and a bowling ball, you dropped them both at the same time, which one would hit first? According to gravity, it would be the bowling ball. But according to reality, they both hit at the same time because things that fall at 32 feet per second, no matter what the weight, mass, or density of it is, it's still 32 feet per second. So with that as a Newtonian mechanical explanation, gravity no longer exists in the standard mindset that we look at it from.
So when you said it's about radio waves or vibrational waves, can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's how gravity is measured, because the gravitation of the polar fields, when you look at, we have a North Pole and a South Pole, and magnets have a positive side and a negative side. Like poles repel each other and unlike poles attract each other. Then what you create is a magnetic field. That magnetic field has a pull, like what holds our planets in the solar system. They say it's the gravitational pull based on the mass of the objects that holds it in place. But you can't measure Jupiter. You can't put Jupiter on the scale to see what it weighs.
Right.
You have to look at the velocity and the mass times the constant, which is like energy equals mass times the constant squared. So what you do is you have to look at how you measure weight based on gravitational distances is the electromagnetic field produced by the polarity of the poles, the North Pole and the South Pole, true magnetic north, which, by the way, has been moving virtually, used to be 12 degrees north east.
Yeah.
Now it's like 12, it's now like 22 degrees northeast.
Oh, wow. Yep.
We're in flux.
Yep.
We're in planetary flux, so gravity is now in flux. So the measurements that we've used for so many years are no longer in play.
So one of the things, Danny, and one of the things that I know you're going to be talking about at an event that we're going to talk about in a few minutes coming up on November 16th is something called the infinity factor. Now, it sounds like some of what you just talked about is part of that. So let's talk about this infinity factor. What is the infinity factor?
A reality check. You know, there's two things. The infinity factor is exercises in your true identity and how it applies to this how it applies to this experience we call life equal to how we've heretofore applied it. Infinity. You exist continuously. You have literally always been, and you will always be. And when I say that, that makes then forever gets to be a whole lot longer than you ever thought it would be.
Oh, yeah.
But it also creates an eternal cycle of growth, evolution, change, and transformation. And this life that we have, this 76 or 77 years on an average that we get to be here, is probably one of the most spiritually enlightening and uplifting challenges that we put upon ourselves. So the Infinity Factor is a series of exercises and techniques to break your heretofore thoughts about yourself as a mental, physical being or just a human being. Because you got to think of it from this point, Susan. We are mental, physical beings. But how much are we that? Because look at this typical. If there's 320 million people in the United States, every human being in the United States is made up of atoms, molecules, and cells. Okay, atoms, molecules, and cells.
Uh-huh.
If you took all the empty space out of every atom, that would be 94.6% empty space. If you took all the empty space out of every molecule, that would be 98%. If you took all the empty space out of every cell, that'd be 97.8%, right in there. So if you took all the empty space out of every atom, every molecule, and every cell of every human being in the United States, 320 million people, we would all fit in a regular-sized matchbox. That's science. So once that is an absolute, unequivocal fact, then who are you? And on top of that, where are you?
Okay, my brain is floating now, Dannion.
Then that means you've become consciously aware of your spiritual identity.
Oh, that's what it means. I thought I was just a dumb blonde.
No way. Come on, watch. In the Infinity Factor, I have like 100 of those things, Susan. Here's real science, everybody. Now compare it to what you believe. Here's what most people believe.
Okay.
Now compare it to what reality is. Compare it to what reality is. And here is proven, replicable reality in a scientific form that's written up in journals from quantum to physics to every day. Like, remember the old saying that there's no human life anywhere else except on the earth, and the rest of it means God builds sloppy universes.
Right, right.
Okay, and now there are 2 billion planets that have water just in this galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that they've discovered that there's 1.1 trillion galaxies.
I
With
had not heard that
Galileos
particular number.
And 1.1 trillion average between 1.1 billion to 10 billion planets and stars per. So with that calculation based on the Galileo to Kepler telescopes,
Mm-hmm.
the satellite imageries from Explorer 1, when you look at that and you realize the theoretical probability of us being alone becomes absurd. It becomes absurd mathematically.
Wow.
Okay?
That makes a lot of sense.
Becomes absurd. No mathematician, based on the numerical values of that proven, photographed, recorded, analyzed, infrared, gamma ray exploration from the Hubble, Galileo, and Kepler satellites. Okay, so tell me a mathematician that said out of 100 trillion, that's a a billion is a trillion, and 100 trillion planets and stars, and the fact that 2 billion planets and 2 billion planets are capable of sustaining life within this one galaxy we call the Milky Way.
Mm-hmm.
Ask any mathematician if it's any way theoretically possible that we could be the only ones here. He'll just laugh.
So, Dannion, I'm hearing what you're saying. Let's bring this down to earth in the sense that I'm looking to understand what your definition and your experience, because you've definitely gone out and beyond, of reality here on Earth is about. Because when you say reality, there's all sorts of opinions, like, of what reality is here. You know, for some people it's about paying their rent, and for others it's about being highly creative and creating the next invention, you know, and all that spectrum in between.
But what you have to think about, Susan, is the reality which in all that opportunity exists.
All that opportunity.
Yeah, everything's an opportunity.
Sounds like you're talking about the infinite field of possibilities that quantum physics points to.
Yeah, the zero field by which we operate from. And how do you succeed knowing? What I try to do is in this workshop is give people ways. Say, stop thinking so crazy. I mean, these are desperate times, supposedly, but we're moving into a new age.
Yes.
And when you look at it from that, you have to adjust. You can't live on 2,000-year-old paradigms in the middle of a collapsing world economy.
Okay, I have to tell you, I'm doing a happy dance in my chair right now that you said that. Because that is part of what I believe, is that there's a 2,000-year-old paradigm that has made a complete shift, and it's up to us to now co-create together what the next level of humanity is going to be about.
Or allow ourselves to be trapped.
Right.
That's why I'm out here. No one dies. It's not going to happen. Get over it. And if I didn't go to hell, anyone who's listening to this program doesn't have a chance.
That's pretty powerful words.
Well, you know, what am I supposed to do? This is the way it really is. And if you just look at it, see what this program is in Westlake Village. I mean, I need people to move past the fear paradigm. You're afraid of something that doesn't occur. You've been deluded into shortening your breath based out of fear.
Right.
What happens, that means that the divine representation of divinity on this earth is air. And once you get afraid or frightened, you quit breathing. You start to breathe shallow, or you hold your breath. And based on that, look what you do. You shut the divine flow off from being able to energize. So by listening to my anecdotes and parables and scientific protocols, people begin to breathe.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, then you put in the next phase, which is the 10 things you need to know before you go. You put in the next phase, and I can change how you are able to pay the rent. So how you're able to accept that the paradigm you're living in is shifting, and you can shift with it.
So, Dannion, let's talk about that. Let's use that as an example of how somebody's in such financial despair, I guess. You know, not a lot of income, and they can't pay their rent. And how does the 10 things you need to know before you go apply to that?
You do a study on what you appreciate.
Oh.
Then you look at what you admire or what people admire about you. Okay, and then you recreate your own personal identity. No one is a victim.
Okay, wait, say that again. No one is a victim.
A victim, no.
I can't tell you how many people I work with personally that when they come to me, that's what they think. And I think we all dabble in that. I definitely have.
It works pretty well, but it's just not true.
Yeah.
You know, no one is a victim. We're all teachers. We come here to teach or learn. Okay? So if it happened to you, then you look and see what it's teaching you, and a lot of times it's what not to do, or what it is that other people are learning. I mean, people have to learn to get, as we move into this next shift, which I believe begins January the 26th of 2014, and it'll run for 125 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 52 years of it will be the rise of the feminine.
Okay, so I'm running as fast as I can to keep up with you, Dannion. So let's explain that. Where do you get those numbers, and why was there a shift for people that are just catching up, you know?
Well, look, I've been studying death for 38 years. but I did study in the Maya for 45 years.
Mm.
And I have been there probably 50 times. And I started when I was 18 years old because I didn't believe crap, and I was an ignorant redneck prick. And I thought I knew everything, but I didn't know anything. And I went to the Mexico. I wanted to see Jimmy Hines run the 100 in the Mexico Olympics. So when I went there, between boxing and track and field, they had ice skating and badminton, and things that doesn't interest me. And a friend said, "Look, let's go to see the pyramid." What are you talking about? There's no such thing as a pyramid in Mexico. They're all in Egypt. So we got in the car, and at 2 o'clock one morning, we pulled in a field. We laid out a little bed rolls. I'm like 17 or 18. When I woke up the next morning, I was on the pedestal of the pyramid, the pyramid of the moon in Teotihuacan.
Oh.
And that changed my whole life.
Mm.
And the fact that it had been there 15 to 20,000 years, and the largest pyramid in the world is just outside of Mexico City,
Mm-hmm.
then I became entranced. And instead of going back home, I started into Maya land. I went to Guatemala, Belize, and I rode buses because when I first went to Cancun, there was not a paved road.
I've been not to Cancun, but I've been to Cancun when there was no paved road. I've never been since they built all those monstrosities.
Yeah, well, I've been back. I go all the time, and I'm a pre-classic Maya. I don't believe in the classic period or the post-classic period because of the Toltec migration and the Inca coming north. I'm pre-classic, so it's Belize, Guatemala.
So what does that mean, pre-classic?
Well, they had astrophysics that was spiritually connected. The Maya thinks they think they all came from Venus.
Uh-huh.
And so the Maya invented the zero. Okay, now think of where Bill Gates would be without the Maya.
Right.
Okay, and so with the zero, you start to postulate in numbers that can range into affinity and multiples and diversion from the primes.
Mm-hmm.
So by studying the Maya believe that it takes 25,920 years for our galaxy to proceed from the outer edge to the inner edge of what we call the galactic center.
Okay.
And it's broken down into 5,125-year periods, and they believe that it operates in 5 cycles per day. And when I saw pyramids and these magnificent structures, I realized that everything I'd ever been told about history was a lie.
Yep.
It was just a lie, and it's 2 hours from Houston. I don't have to go to India, China, anywhere. It's 2 hours from Houston, and then I got to be like a pyramid freak. So I've been in every country that there are pyramids. China, the Yucatan, mounds in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all these places that have these all along the northern parts of Peru and the Andes and in Bolivia. And I've seen them all. Every time someone tells me that we are the most advanced civilization, that's a fool talking.
Pretty arrogant, isn't it?
It's a fool.
Yep.
That means they've never been anywhere but with their nose in the book, believe in something that helps them move their careers. So, at the Maya figures 5,125-year periods, and we just, on December the 21st, 2012, the Maya believed that the crossing section of the cross-section, and I talk about this in the workshop, but it's a little less complex as fast as I'm doing it now. But the Maya believed that between each Baktun, which is the 5,125-year period, there's a 400-period day of grace. Okay, and we're in it. So around January the 26th, that 400-day period ends.
What do you mean by day of grace? That's not like a traditional Christian definition of grace, is it?
Yeah, it's like being thankful for your food. You get a chance to shake it off. Here's what the Maya said about the last 5,125 years, which is what, in Christian belief, the world's only 6,000 years old.
Yeah, that's a laughable idea, isn't it?
Yeah, but here's what's cool about it. Look at the Chinese calendar. Look at the Mayan calendar. Look at the Aztec calendar. Look at the Hebrew calendar. All of those calendars started between 3,104 and 3,114.
Okay.
Every known calendar started within 10 years of each other.
Mm-hmm.
What does that tell you? It was a common source.
Right.
No question. How could they know? How could somebody in China know what somebody in Mayan Olmec tradition halfway around the world, 12 or 13,000 miles from each other? How do they all know? You think the Chinese, the Mayas, the Hebrews, the Aztecs, the all those indigenous tribes all got together and decided what day to make their calendar? So when you think about it from that point, the Mayans said all things not done in integrity at the end of this last period would collapse.
Oh, my goodness. Now I get it.
Okay, now, how many people trust their banker?
Oh, yeah.
How many people trust the government?
Yep.
Okay, how many people?
Their doctors. How many people trust their doctors?
Yeah, and was it done in integrity? No. Okay, what did the Mayans say about the next time period? There would be no secrets. It's called, you go from the galactic period to the universal period.
Oh.
Okay, there would be no secrets. Well, the NSA's proven that to be true. So it's coming about a reign of integrity. And ever how you got yourself into that place where you can't pay the bills, it was you believed some delusional aspect of an illusionary monetary value that someone told you your home was worth. And then they inflated that bubble. They did this in the 20s at the same time, just like what the stock market is.
Right.
It's exactly 1896 to 1929 today. That means it's just being controlled. It's just happening to us because we fall for it. But in this next cycle, integrity, there are no secrets. Everything is recorded. This is being recorded. Everything is recorded. So instead of it being a fear-based, it gives you a chance to live in integrity and be honest and straightforward.
So, Dannion, what I'm hearing you say, because I'm a big integrity meter person, I stand on integrity and boy.
That's all you have.
Yeah, and if you step, and I know for me personally, if I put one itty-bitty toe out of that integrity line, I'm like in trouble. But
I agree.
So for an individual, say, who's in that place of fear that they can't pay their rent and they can't put food on the table, how does that individual move themselves into integrity, themselves? Like, so, because it sounds like what you're saying, if there's no secrets, then it's about the individual really looking within themselves to see where they may have been out of integrity themselves or buying into somebody else's lack of integrity.
Yeah, we bought into a whole system. Religions, institutions, and governments. I mean, we bought into a system that absolutely was completely out of integrity. The gold system, the fractal banking. Look at it's just a crapshoot when you look at $570 trillion worth of derivatives, which is really insurance. You can sell somebody something in the stock market and bet against it failing. So, and you're going to make money based on you sold somebody, made a profit off of selling it to them. You bet against it, and when you bet against it, you get paid twice.
Right.
Where's the integrity in that?
Right. So as you're speaking about this, what I'm beginning to feel some fear over here, Dannion, of, oh my gosh, the whole world. It feels a little bit like the end of days.
Isn't
as you're
it
describing.
Great? Who in the world would want to miss the end of time? I mean, I think it's exciting. I can't wait to see the Antichrist. It's going to be fun.
You are cracking me up because this is what I tell my students, we're here for a reason. There are so many people here on the planet right now for a particular reason. What it is.
We are the champions. We're those who keep the light lit. the divine only sends the best of us in transition periods.
Oh, my
I mean,
goodness.
I know this. Everybody here chose to be here because the divine believes that at the moment, there would be a billion beings standing, waiting to enter that fetus. A billion beings standing there, hoping that at that exact moment of conception, when the spiritual nature or soul consciousness adapts to that fetus to be born, at that particular instant, in that particular moment, anticipating the social psychological unfoldment, and you happen to be the one, the divine one chosen to enter. And this is an absolute, unequivocal fact. That whole story of being born in sin, that's still a bunch of crazy people talking.
Oh, my goodness.
It's utter nonsense. I mean, it's nonsense. It doesn't make sense no matter what. And when did it come into existence? I think it was the Edict of Nicaea or the Edict of Milan between 325 and 348.
I think you're right.
And when did reincarnation get taken out of the Bible? Around 500.
Uh-huh.
You know, because it's all about control.
So what we're seeing, or what we're beginning, so, because again, working with people, I mean, I can't even leave my house without feeling the fear factor coming in on me.
Me
you
too.
know? And I have to really sit down with myself and go, okay, is this my fear or somebody else's fear? And so
it's a collective consciousness.
Yeah. And so as we're participating in the deconstruction of that fear consciousness, it seems very important to put. One of the affirmations I've been working on is I have freedom and joy and love in my life all the time, so that I can know that I'm free.
I have it a little better than that.
All right, you go.
If it's not funny, it's not spiritual.
I knew I was going to like you.
From the South, remember, if it ain't funny, it ain't spiritual. And if you want to talk to me about divinity and you're not making me laugh, you can keep it to yourself. There's only, and people have all kinds of reasons, there's only three things that I'm interested: having fun, getting to heaven, and making money. And if it doesn't have anything to one of those three, you just tell it to yourself. So in everyday functioning, if you're in trouble and you can't pay the rent, and your income is not coming because you've bought into a system that puts yourself in debt. Look at the United States.
Mm-hmm.
We gave up our entire industrial base so we could buy cheap crap from China on credit.
Right.
Okay,
And
that's
now
what
where are
happened.
we? Right.
Okay, it became globalization, redistribution of wealth. Okay. Then we did this. So then we bought into that because we all wanted a TV and some sports equipment. Okay? So now, how can you get out of that mindset? Clean out your closet and take what you don't wear or what you'll never put on and take it down to a place where a coat that you have this winter will make all the difference in a person that's on the street or the soup kitchen
Yeah.
or women's abuse shelter.
Yeah.
I do this all the time. You know, I don't clean out my closet. I mean, I've done that 1,000 times. But we have so much junk we don't need that becomes a treasure to so many other people.
Absolutely.
Okay? And go be. Here's the biggest deal. Now, watch this, Susan. Okay, one day you're cruising around in heaven, and God comes up to you and he puts his arm around you and says, "Hi, Suze. What's happening?" You say, "Everything's cool, God. How about with you?" God says, "Well, listen, Susan. How would you like to be me for a couple of days?" "Wow, God, what a great idea. I can be you for a couple of days. That means I can be omnipotent. I can be compassionate. I can be caring. I can be forgiving. I can be supportive. I can create life. I can do all those things that you see the magnificence of the divinity. Yeah, God, I'd certainly like to be you for a couple of days." And God says, "Wow, that's a great idea." And you know what happens next? You're born.
Oh, good grief.
So you come into this life to be compassionate,
Yeah.
to be creative. Everything that you can describe who you hope God is, you have the choice and opportunity to be God-like in your life every day today. So what you have, which is junk, can be the greatest gift for someone living on the street. What you making a cake and taking it down to someone, then your identity of yourself transposes into a server, into a consciousness of the co-creative nature of God. Because remember, when you have a panoramic life review, you know, you see your life pass before you in a 360-degree panorama. You watch it from a second-person point of view. You literally become every person that you've ever encountered, and you feel the direct results of your interaction between you and that person.
Oh, my goodness, really?
Yeah, no one gets away with anything. All that story about Jesus, finding Jesus when you're taking your last breath, whoever came up with that never had a near-death experience. No one gets away with anything.
Well, and what's interesting is that you're saying that we also feel, experience everybody else that we've ever interacted with. So we
literally.
So why is that? What happens with that?
Because we're all one.
Thank you for saying that.
And we're all doing it to each other. What changed me more than anything else, Suze, was this. I got tired of hitting myself in the face.
Oh, good. Yeah.
You know, being such a, oh, God, you have no idea. I mean, I have no idea. And so I just got tired of shooting and beating myself. So that was the transformation. But here's the key. Judgment. You know, we all hope the book of records are going to open up and God or St. Peter's going to be there and blah, blah, blah. Well, here's what happens. If God could not come today and God sent you, in the life you just reviewed, what difference did you and God make? And that's how you're going to judge the life you lived. That was what changed me.
So let's say that again, because so in the life that you've just lived, what difference did you make?
If God could not come today and God sent you, in the life you just reviewed, what difference did you and God make?
Dannion, I think that's a great phrase and a great idea. Instead of what would Jesus do, it's what difference would you and God have made. I love that.
What I became was a hospice volunteer. I knew something because I knew it happened. And I didn't have any problems, and people said, well, Dannion, what if people don't believe you or they're cynical and skeptical? I said, what do I care? You know, everybody has. I said, I'd be the most cynical, skeptical jackass you ever met. And, you know, I don't care what people think or believe. It's of no interest to me. When I saw what difference did me and God make, I decided to be at the bedside of those people who had lived under those delusional, fear-based concepts based on guilty of the original sin. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. It's stupid. I'm guilty of what some people were doing in the desert 5,000 years ago. What an asinine concept. I wasn't even there. I didn't even see any pictures. You know, I didn't get a bite of the apple. How in the world could I be guilty of any of that? I mean, that stuff's when you've been dead, Susan. All that stuff is crazy. I
get it.
It's crazy. So I decided to be a hospice volunteer because the difference that God and I can make, if I'm going to be every person I've ever encountered, and I'm going to feel the direct results, I know when my time passes over this next time and I get to see that veteran or that person in transition, they're going to be looking in the face of the divine. Me and God's there. And I'm here holding that light and teaching and learning an art form about celebrating a life. I don't have any depression about somebody passing. I want them to know their life had meaning and had value, and that I'm there keeping that light lit and being present to listen, to ask them about the joys of their life. And I use things like I did on Kim's show. What's your favorite song and why? I can take a person from that bed to the first kiss and the first dance and, you know, the first date or when they got off the boat coming home. And all of a sudden I'm living their life and looking and asking questions about it. Well, what happened then? Then that person gets a chance to review their life and to see it had value. And I compliment things and I say, whoa, boy, that was crazy. Bet you drink a lot of liquor after that. Yeah. And all of a sudden that person's finding value in their life. So if God couldn't come today and God sent me in the life I will review, based on that, what difference did me and God made? We held the light at the bedside.
Dannion,
we were there.
Dannion, I so appreciate the work that you're doing. What you're talking about, we're going to take a short break, but what we're talking about is one of the many things that Dannion Brinkley's done with his life, which is the Twilight Brigade. So we're going to take a short break. You're listening to Living Your Inspired Life on News Talk 1590 KVTA. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Living Your Inspired Life. I'm Susan Burrell. If you've missed anything today, go to livingyourinspiredlife.org. Get tuned in and tuned up and develop your power perspective. So I have as my guest today, I'm just so thrilled, Dannion Brinkley. And Dannion is doing an event in the Ventura County area at Westlake Centers for Spiritual Living on November 16th from 1 to 4. You can go to the website cslwestlake.org and find out more about it and get a ticket and go and see him. And part of why you're doing this event, Dannion, is because you're raising money for this program that you co-founded called the Twilight Brigade.
Yeah, and also raising awareness. Think of this. When I came back, what we were talking about before the break, if God couldn't come today and God sent you in the life you just reviewed, what difference did you and God make? What I realized was how many veterans had done things that the priest can forgive them, the president can give them a medal, the rabbi can talk. But when you're lying there in that bed and you've swept through a village, and like one guy told me, he said, when you were in Vietnam, at least you knew who your enemy was. He said, I was killing me.
Yeah.
And one guy said that he was born in Germany, came to the United States, and when he turned 18 years old, he joined the United States Army, and they invaded, and he had gone back to the motherland a couple of times to see his grandparents and aunt and uncle, and it was his company that invaded the village.
Oh, good grief.
And he killed both sets of grandparents, his uncle, and 4 cousins.
Oh, my
Not
gosh.
him literally, because you don't know what bullet hit them, but when they were laying the bodies out, he saw it, and he could never come home after the war and tell his mom and dad that he had killed their parents. Now, who in the world, lying in a bed with no one coming to visit you and you're 93 years old,
Yeah.
who in the world can deal with that?
Right.
Okay, so I started out with AIDS patients, veterans who had AIDS, and people who, and you got it for a lot of different reasons, but there was such a stigma.
Right.
And, there was back in those days, if you walked on the other side of the street with someone with AIDS, you sure you got it.
Right. I remember.
And so I started with AIDS patients because I didn't care. And I would see what they were going through, and I would watch the fast progression of their transition. And I called parents and tried to give them back, an identity. And, people had deserted them, and I created parties for them. And I came out here and I did it because these people, they were there for us when we needed them. We have to be there for them now that they need us. I
am in 100% agreement. I had for a very short time, I had a client who was a vet from the Iraqi war. I think he served twice, and he was only 23 when I was talking to him, and there was no way he could integrate back into his life.
Oh, no, it's not going to happen.
He was just lost. And the other thing is he talked about deep spiritual comprehension in a way that was almost mystical, and other people go, oh, he's crazy. But there was,
Far from crazy.
Yeah.
Tragedy has a way of creating a spiritual connection, and we have not developed systems. We have not developed systems to help a person who was born to fight and kill to integrate, and then they have to stuff that back in. So I decided, since I am one of them, people say, why are you so interested in dying veterans? Because I am one.
Right.
And so I decided to create the Twilight Brigade after maybe 20 years of being a hospice volunteer. I've been a hospice volunteer for 36 years.
Oh, thank you so much.
I have 31,000 hours at the bedside. I've been with 2,006 people going from this world to the next, and 425 taking their last breath. So I have developed this whole training. Everybody's going to be a hospice volunteer.
Okay.
Everybody. And when you look at my age group, 10,000 of us turn 65 every day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 81 million of us, baby boomers. 76 million born in America, plus those who have immigrated here, green cards and new status or got married. So there's about 81 million of us. And with 10,000 turning 65 every day, that means you have basically 11 years.
Right.
So the goal is going to be how many of us are leaving. How many of us today know that someone's leaving? So I developed a series with partners. I developed a series of tools and on art forms called the Twilight Brigade, so that you are prepared. You know what to do. You know the right questions to ask. You know what you need to do in a very stressful, emotional point. And in veterans, because they're so alienated, because our systems are literally corrupt, and it's about a bunch of bureaucracies as opposed to service, then it takes a volunteer, because I'm not looking for a job and you can't fire me.
Yes, thank you.
And so this is what I do, and it's that me, God and I, when I get to the other side, it's that joy of being able to have made a difference in that person's life. And so now there are 6,000 of us in 22 states, and I just keep growing. And we have a strong Twilight Brigade group in Los Angeles. And so what I do is I target, I like churches of religious science and churches of new living. I like unity, because the greatest way to grow an organization is to have within your structure an outreach community that becomes caregivers. And if I'm going to go to a church, and that church was there with trained people to be at the bedside, not whining, patting you on the back, but people who knew what to do, then how are you going to grow up a place? You grow it because you know the safety of that place creates security when you know it's time for transition for you or a loved one.
Right.
So I pick and target places around my major centers. And I come and do these presentations. I create fundraisers. I create awareness. So I'm sincerely asking everybody. I used to say this about my books. They said, "Why should I buy your books?" I said, well, one reason you should buy my books is that you know someone who's going to die. Number two, do you know somebody who has died? Number three, have you forgotten that you live forever? Now, if you don't know anybody who's going to die, if you don't know anybody who's going to die, and you don't know that you live forever, then you should read my books. But if you do, then you should not. But I highly recommend, if you want to have a lot of fun, get a lot of facts, and be able to interact, talk, and have discussions about issues, I have your back. I have your back. I have it where you can come in an open forum. It's interactive, where there's periods where you can talk and bring up your subjects. I mean, you can even argue with me. I don't care. But I need people to have a place of safety and a place of sanctuary. I need them to understand they'll go away with tools that help them based on 36 years of being at the bedside. There's nothing about the process that I don't know. Plus, I've already been there, Susan.
Yeah. So, Dannion, if for our listeners who want to get involved with the Twilight Brigade, what's the website, or where do they go?
The Twilight Brigade.
.com, .org?
Yeah, .com or .org. I have them both.
Okay.
And if they really want to get involved, come to the program. We'll have someone there. I think it's Teresa. Teresa will be there at the back with information, talking. I mean, we have a good contingent of really great people.
So that's Saturday, November 16th from 1 to 4 at the Westlake Center for Spiritual Living, and you can go to cslwestlake.org to get a ticket. And Dannion, you're going to have books there, yes?
Yeah, I
Somebody's bringing your books.
Okay, yeah, I don't. Yes, I mean, most people do that. I don't ever, because HarperCollins is my publisher,
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I'm pretty sure they'll be there. I mean, I hope so, but I can't emphatically say that.
But we can go to Dannion.com to order books as well, right?
Absolutely.
And
yeah,
that,
and you can, that comes through. If you go to my site, then it supports Twilight Brigade and Dannion. And Amazon, you can get it in 2 days. Because a lot of people, Susan, what a lot of people do is when they first hear about me, because I've sold millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of books. But when they first hear about me, they usually go and get one of the books so they can, see what they're walking into.
right, check you out.
Yeah, and then or get good questions. People need to be proactive and interactive because it's someone we love or someone who loves us we're coming to learn about.
Uh-huh.
And in the course of that, we discover the magnificent talent and beauty of ourselves as a co-creator. Like I said earlier, I'm God. Hi, Susan. How would you like to be me for a couple of days? And it's called a life.
Yeah.
When you think in those terms, you expand your creative capability to make a difference. You clean out your closet and go help someone who's probably worse off than you. And what is junk in your closet becomes a treasure in their world. And when you stand there, don't go put it in the bin. Take it down there. Watch them rummage through it. Watch them put it on. Watch them in their faces, especially if your kids have stuff that you could pass on to a women's shelter, an abused shelter, or a homeless shelter. And watch the faces of the people when they put it on and it fits, or it's brand new and it's clean. Watch that expression and remember it was you that delivered that moment of grace in their life. Then you change.
Yes.
Then your potential changes. And then that radiant light of being helpless disappears. And then you get a better, more conscious viewpoint of how to get out of whatever it is you created to get yourself into it.
That sounds like a bridge. So, Dannion, we are coming at the end of our time together. This is Dannion Brinkley we've been sharing time with today. And he's going to be at the Westlake Center for Spiritual Living November 16th. Thank you so much for your joy and your wisdom and your commitment and the I don't care. I am just sending you lots of love.
I sincerely thank you, and thank you for having me on my show. And I ask everybody who's listening, please tell 2 other people to come and participate in Susan's show and take part so that this kind of conversation can grow and open up our hearts and minds to a greater divine perspective of ourselves.
Thank you so much, Dannion. And I'm going to say namaste, and so it is.